hear that? Is it Rachel? That's not her voice. Oh my god.
Hey guys, listen up. Come closer to the fire for a second. I've got something I want to share with you. I've been getting some pretty creepy stories sent to me by email. Real stuff people swear actually happened. And I thought, since we're all here tonight, this might be the perfect time to tell a few. So sit tight, listen close, and don't drift too far from the light. So, I won't say who sent these or exactly where they're from, but I'll read them exactly as they wrote to me. Word for word. And, I don't know. There's something about these that feels different. Like these people are still scared, you know? So, first one came from someone who was hiking with friends last October. They were about 2 days into a 4-day trip. Here's what they wrote. I'm writing this because I need someone to know what happened, and everyone I've told in person just says we got turned around or that the mountains played tricks. But I know what I heard. We all heard it. Last October, me and 3 friends, Rachel, Marcus, and Tim, decided to do a long weekend backpacking trip in eastern Kentucky, up near Panther Gap. It's pretty remote up there. Lots of old logging roads that don't go anywhere anymore, and the trails aren't maintained like the popular spots. We're all experienced hikers, done plenty of overnight trips, so we figured 4 days would be no problem. First day was normal, weather was perfect, mid-50s, leaves were peak color. We made good time getting to our first campsite, which was just a flat spot near a creek about 6 miles in. That night we had a fire, made dinner, told stories, standard stuff. Marcus thought he heard something moving around our camp around midnight. But when he shined his light out there, nothing. Probably a raccoon. Second day is when things started feeling off. We were following this ridge trail that was supposed to loop around and connect to another trail heading north. But the trail markings got really sparse. We'd go 20 minutes without seeing a blaze on a tree, then find one, then nothing again for a while. The fog rolled in around noon, thick stuff that made it hard to see more than 30 feet ahead. Rachel was leading, and she stopped at this weird spot where the trail seemed to split into 3 different paths, none of them marked. We stood there looking at our map, trying to figure out which way. When Tim said, "Hey, do you guys hear that?" we all went quiet. At first I didn't hear anything except wind in the trees. Then I heard it. Someone was calling out, faint, like they were maybe 100 yards away. "Hello? Can anyone hear me?" It was a woman's voice. Marcus immediately yelled back, "Yeah, we hear you. Where are you?" The voice called out again, same words, same tone. "Hello? Can anyone hear me?" It didn't sound panicked, just calling out, like someone who was lost and hoping to find people. We started moving toward where we thought the voice was coming from, Rachel still in front. But the fog was so thick, and the trees were dense. We'd stop, listen, hear the voice again, adjust our direction. This went on for maybe 15 minutes. The voice never got closer. It stayed the same volume, same distance. Then Rachel stopped hard and held up her hand. "Wait," she said. "Listen to exactly what she's saying." We stood there, and the voice called out again. "Hello? Can anyone hear me?" Marcus yelled back, "Yes, keep talking so we can find you." Nothing, just wind. Then, after about 30 seconds, the voice again. "Hello? Can anyone hear me?" Same words. Same exact inflection, like a recording on a loop. "That's weird," Tim said. Maybe she can't hear us? But Rachel was shaking her head. No, listen. She's not asking for help. She's not saying anything else, just that one line, over and over. We stood there and sure enough, about every 30 to 40 seconds we'd hear it again. Hello? Can anyone hear me? Never any variation, never any response to us yelling back. Okay, this is creepy, Marcus said. Maybe we should just get back to the trail. We all agreed, turned around, started heading back the way we came. Except we couldn't find the trail. The fog had gotten worse, and nothing looked familiar. We'd been so focused on following that voice that we hadn't paid attention to landmarks. We were lost. Rachel pulled out her GPS. No signal. Cell phones, same thing. We were in a complete dead zone. All right, let's just pick a direction and stick with it, I said. We head downhill. We'll eventually hit the creek. Follow that back. So we started moving downhill, and that's when we heard the second voice. This one was a man. Deep voice, clear as day. Is somebody out here? I think I'm lost. We all froze. This voice was coming from a completely different direction, off to our right, maybe 50 yards away. Hello? The man's voice called again. I think I'm hurt. Can someone help me? Now, here's the thing. We should have known right then. We should have turned and run. But it's hard to explain. When you hear someone saying they're hurt, every instinct tells you to help, even when something feels wrong. Marcus started toward the voice. Rachel grabbed his arm. Don't! Someone might actually be hurt, Marcus said. Then why is the woman still calling? Rachel said. She was right. Behind us, still in the distance, we could hear it. Hello? Can anyone hear me? And ahead of us, the man. I think I'm hurt. Can someone help me? Two people calling out, neither of them responding to us, neither of them saying anything different. We need to move, Tim said. His voice was shaking. We need to move right now. We started moving faster, heading downhill, trying to put distance between us and the voices. But they followed. Not exactly followed. They stayed the same distance away, always just out of sight in the fog. And then a third voice started. This one was a child, a little girl. Mommy, Mommy, where are you? I've never felt anything like the cold that went through me when I heard that. It wasn't just scary, it was wrong. Everything about it was wrong. Don't respond, Rachel said. Don't say anything, just keep moving. We were almost running now, stumbling over roots and rocks, and the voices kept calling. The woman, the man, the little girl. Always the same words, always the same tone, and they were coming from different directions now, surrounding us. Then I heard my own name. James? It was Rachel's voice. James, where did you go? I can't see you. But Rachel was right next to me. I looked at her, and her face had gone white. That's not me, she whispered. The voice called out again. Her voice, perfect mimicry. James? I'm scared. Where are you? Marcus heard his name next. Then Tim. Our own voices calling to each other. But we were all standing right there together. The fog was so thick now, I could barely see 10 feet ahead. We have to find shelter, I said. A rock outcropping, something we can put our backs against. We kept moving, and I don't know how long we stumbled through those woods. The voices kept calling, sometimes far away, sometimes close enough that it sounded like someone was standing just behind the next tree. My voice kept calling for Rachel. Rachel's voice kept calling for me. Marcus and Tim heard their names over and over. Finally, we found this big rock formation, like a small cliff face with an overhang. We got under it, pulled out our tents, and huddled together. It was only about 4 in the afternoon, but we weren't moving. We decided we'd wait until morning, hope the fog cleared. The voices continued until after dark. They only stopped when the sun went down completely. None of us slept. We just sat there, backs against the rock, watching the darkness, listening. Around 3 in the morning, we heard footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps, crunching through leaves. They walked past our shelter, maybe 20 feet away. We could hear breathing. Not human breathing. Too deep, too rhythmic, like something large and deliberate. It walked past 3 times, back and forth. Then it stopped. We heard it standing there in the dark, just standing. We didn't move, didn't make a sound. After what felt like an hour, it walked away. When dawn came, the fog was gone. We could see clearly. We packed up, found a trail marker within 10 minutes of our shelter, and got back to the main trail. We hiked out fast, didn't stop except once for water. We never talked about what to tell people. When we got back to Marcus's car and drove out of there, we all just agreed to say we'd had bad weather and cut the trip short. But here's the thing I didn't tell them. When we were packing up that morning under the rock shelter, I found something. There were footprints in the dirt near where we'd heard that thing walking. They started as human footprints, boot prints, like a hiker. But halfway through the prints, they changed. They went from boot prints to something else, something with claws, and then back to boot prints again. I didn't say anything. I just covered them up with leaves and acted like I didn't see them. We don't talk anymore, the 4 of us. We tried for a while, but every conversation would eventually get quiet, and we'd all be thinking about the same thing. About the voices that knew our names, about the thing that walked past us in the dark. I still hear my name sometimes when I'm alone in my apartment. Just once, faint, like it's coming from another room. I know it's not real. I know that. But I always check anyway. Yeah. So that's the first one. I had to read that twice when it came in because... I don't know. The footprints thing. That detail. The next email came from someone who works for the Forestry Service. Or worked. I think they quit after this. They were doing a wildlife survey up in West Virginia, November of last year. They said they'd been doing this job for 8 years and never saw anything like this. Here's what they wrote. I need to preface this by saying I'm a rational person. I have a degree in wildlife biology. I've spent 8 years working for the Forestry Service, done hundreds of surveys, spent countless nights alone in the woods. I don't believe in ghosts or monsters or anything like that. I believe in data and observation. But I don't do field work anymore. Last November, I was assigned to do a white-tailed deer population survey in a section of Monongahela National Forest. It's pretty standard work. You set up trail cameras, do visual counts at dawn and dusk, document herd behavior, check for signs of disease. The area I was assigned was remote, about 12 miles from the nearest forest road, accessible only by ATV and then hiking. I went in alone, which is normal for this kind of work. I had a satellite phone, GPS, enough supplies for 5 days. The weather was cold but clear, mid-30s during the day, dropping to the teens at night. Perfect conditions, actually. Deer are more active in the cold. First 2 days were routine. I set up 6 trail cameras in a grid pattern covering about 2 square miles. I saw plenty of deer, healthy populations, good mix of does, bucks, and juveniles. I documented everything properly, took photos, made notes on behavior patterns. Everything was textbook. Third morning, I was checking camera 3, which was positioned overlooking a small clearing near a spring. When I pulled the SD card and reviewed the footage on my laptop, I saw something that made me rewind and watch again. The timestamp showed 2:47 a.m. A deer walked into the frame from the left side. An 8-point buck, good size, maybe 180 pounds. It walked to the center of the clearing, and then it stopped. And it looked directly at the camera. Now, deer don't do that. Trail cameras use infrared. They don't have lights, They don't make noise. Deer don't know they're there. They might glance in the general direction occasionally by coincidence, but they don't stop and stare directly into the lens. This one did. For 43 seconds, it stood completely still and looked right at the camera. Then it walked away, but it walked wrong. The gait was off. The legs moved too independently, not in the natural rhythm of a deer's walk. It reminded me of something, but I couldn't place it at first. Then I realized it moved like a person imitating a four-legged walk. Deliberate, mechanical. I told myself I was reading too much into it. Maybe the deer was injured, had a neurological issue, something explainable. I made a note to watch for it again. That afternoon, I was doing a visual survey from a ridge overlooking a holler. I had my binoculars, scanning for movement. Around 4 p.m., I spotted a deer standing in an open area about 200 yards away. It was facing me, just standing there, completely motionless, facing my direction. I watched it for 5 minutes. It didn't move, didn't eat, didn't look around, didn't flick its ears, just stood there. Deer don't do that. They're constantly alert, constantly moving, scanning for predators. They don't stand still like statues. I moved my position about 30 yards to the east and looked again. The deer had turned. It was facing me again. That's when my hands started shaking. I put down the binoculars and just watched with my naked eyes. The deer was too far away to see clearly without magnification, but I could see its basic shape. It was still standing there, still facing me. I packed up and headed back to my camp. I didn't want to be on that ridge anymore. That night, I heard it walking around my tent. I know deer sounds. I've heard them thousands of times. They're quiet, but they make noise. Leaves crunch, twigs snap. You can hear them breathing. This made all those sounds, but the pattern was wrong. The footsteps were too evenly spaced, too rhythmic. Step, 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 like someone counting beats. I stayed in my tent with my headlamp off, listening. It circled the tent 3 times. Then it stopped right outside the door. I could hear it breathing. Slow, deep breaths. In and out. In and out. Then it made a sound I've never heard from any animal. It was like a deer's bleat, but distorted. Too low-pitched, and it went on too long. It lasted maybe 10 seconds, this continuous low bleating sound that didn't stop for breath. I didn't move. I barely breathed. After the sound stopped, I heard it walk away, back into the woods. The footsteps faded. I didn't sleep at all that night. 4th morning, I found tracks around my tent. Deer tracks, cloven hooves, the right size and shape, but the pattern was wrong. They were too perfectly spaced, and they circled my tent in an exact circle. No variation, no places where a real deer would have paused or changed direction. Just a perfect circle of prints. I should have packed up right then. I should have called it in and hiked out. But I'd already collected 4 days of data, and I only had 1 more day to finish the survey. I convinced myself I was being irrational, stressed, not sleeping well. I went out to check the last 2 trail cameras. Camera 5 showed the same buck from camera 3. Same timestamp as the previous night, 2:47 a.m. It walked into frame, stopped, looked directly at the camera. But this time, its mouth opened. Deer don't do that. They don't just stand there with their mouths hanging open. While I was watching this footage, standing there in the woods with my laptop balanced on a tree stump, I heard a branch snap behind me. I turned around. There was a deer standing about 40 feet away. Same size buck, 8-point antlers. It was standing on its hind legs. I don't mean reared up like deer sometimes do when they're fighting. I mean standing upright, balanced like a person stands. Its front legs hung down at its sides. Its head was tilted at an angle that necks don't tilt, too far, almost perpendicular to its body. We stared at each other. I don't know for how long. time felt broken. All I could think was that this wasn't a deer. It looked like a deer. It had the right parts in the right places, but it wasn't a deer. Then it dropped to all fours and bolted away, but the movement was wrong. It fell forward onto its front legs like a puppet with cut strings, and then it ran. But the running was too fast, too smooth. Deer crashed through underbrush. This thing flowed through it. I grabbed my laptop, left the camera where it was, and started back to camp. I didn't run. Some instinct told me not to run. I walked fast, kept moving, didn't look back. I could hear it following me, staying parallel about 50 yards into the trees. I'd hear branches breaking, leaves rustling. It was keeping pace. When I got back to camp, it was early afternoon, still plenty of daylight. I packed up everything in about 15 minutes, loaded my pack, and started hiking toward the ATV access point. 6 miles. I could make it before dark if I moved fast. The thing followed me the entire way, always just out of sight. Sometimes I'd hear it ahead of me, sometimes behind, sometimes on both sides, which didn't make sense because there was only one of them. At least I'd only seen one. The sun was setting when I reached my ATV. I'd never been so happy to see that piece of government equipment. I strapped my pack on, started the engine, and drove the 12 miles of forest road back to the highway without stopping once. When I got to my truck, I loaded everything up and sat in the cab with the doors locked. I was shaking so hard I couldn't get the key in the ignition at first. I filed my report the next week. Standard data, nothing unusual mentioned. I sent in the SD cards from the 5 cameras I'd retrieved. I didn't include any of the footage from camera 3 or 5. I deleted it. I also put in my 2 weeks' notice. My supervisor called me, asked if I was sure about quitting. I told him I was moving to a different field. He said that was a shame. I was one of their best surveyors. I didn't tell him the real reason. I didn't tell him that when I watched the footage from camera 6, the one I left in the woods because I ran, it showed something at 2:47 a.m. But it wasn't a deer. It was a person in the frame, standing upright, wearing what looked like a deer hide. But the hide was wrong. It was attached to them, fused to them, and the person underneath wasn't shaped right. The proportions were wrong, the limbs too long. The figure stood there for 43 seconds looking at the camera. Then it opened its mouth, and another mouth opened inside that one. Then it walked away on all fours. I burned that SD card. I never told anyone what I saw until right now. I work in an office now. Data analysis. I don't go into the woods anymore. And when I'm driving and I see a deer on the side of the road, I always check the way it's standing. The way it moves. Most of them are normal. Most of them are real deer. Most of them. I don't know what to say about that one. The part about the mouth, inside the mouth. Jesus. This last one came in 2 days ago. No name, sent from a burner email. Just a story and a single line at the end that said, "I know it's still up there. I almost didn't include this one. It's different from the others. But I think people need to hear it." Here's what they wrote. I need to tell this story before I forget how to speak about it, before the words get too slippery to hold on to. My family's from eastern Tennessee, deep in the mountains near the North Carolina border. There's a holler back in there that doesn't have a real name. People just call it Granny Opal's Hollow, after my great-great-grandmother who lived there until she died in 1987. The cabin's still standing, or it was last I checked. Nobody goes there anymore. Nobody except me, apparently. I went back in March. I'd been having these dreams about the place, really vivid ones where I could smell the wood smoke and hear the creek running past the cabin. In the dreams, someone was calling me home. That's what the voice said. Time to come home. I'm not a superstitious person, but that holler's always had a reputation. My grandmother wouldn't talk about it. Her mother, Granny Opal's daughter, she'd just shake her head and change the subject if you asked. But my cousin Darren told me some things before he died. He said Granny Opal was a witch, not in a fairy tale way, in the way people really believed back then. She knew things, could do things. People would come from 3 counties over to see her when they were sick or cursed, or needed something done that doctors and preachers couldn't help with. He also said she made a deal. With what? He wouldn't say. But she lived to be 104 years old, stayed sharp as a tack until the day she died, and never got sick once. And the holler itself, animals didn't go in there. Plants grew wrong. The trees twisted in ways that didn't make sense. I should have listened to those stories. I drove as far as I could up the old logging road, then hiked the last 1.5 miles in. It was early afternoon, cold but sunny. The woods were quiet. Too quiet. I realized after about 10 minutes that I hadn't heard a single bird. When I reached the hollow, I saw the cabin sitting there, just like I remembered from when I was a kid. My dad had taken me up there once when I was maybe 7 or 8, before he decided we'd never go back. It looked the same. Gray weathered wood, stone chimney, porch sagging on one side. The door was still there, hanging on rusty hinges. Standing on that porch was the strangest feeling I've ever had. Like I was expected. Like something had been waiting. I pushed the door open. It swung inward with a creak, and I stepped inside. The interior was surprisingly intact. There was still furniture, a rocking chair, a table, a bed frame in the corner. Shelves on the walls with jars and bottles, most of them empty or filled with dried-up contents I couldn't identify. The fireplace was full of old ashes. On the mantel, there were objects arranged in a specific pattern. Stones, feathers, something that might have been bone. And there was a smell. Not decay. The cabin was old but dry. This was something else. Herbs, maybe. Smoke. Something sweet and something bitter mixed together. I spent about an hour looking around, taking pictures with my phone, though I noticed the battery was draining fast, even though it had been full when I arrived. I found Granny Opal's journal in a drawer in the table. The pages were brittle, the handwriting tight and slanted. I couldn't read most of it. Some of it was in English, but a lot was in another language, or maybe just words that didn't exist. One entry I could read said, "It comes with the fog. It always comes with the fog. But the trade's been kept, and the hollow stays sealed." I heard the wind pick up outside. When I looked out the window, I saw fog rolling in fast, pouring down from the ridge like water. Thick gray fog that swallowed the trees. That's when I should have left. But I didn't. I kept reading. Another entry. 3 stones to bind, 5 words to keep, blood to seal. The trade doesn't end when I do. Someone has to hold it. The fog reached the cabin. It pressed against the windows, blocked out the sun. Inside went dim. I heard footsteps on the porch. Slow footsteps, deliberate. They walked from one end of the porch to the other, then back. Then they stopped at the door I'd left open. I turned around. There was a woman standing in the doorway. Old woman, thin, wearing a dress that looked like it was from 50 years ago. Her hair was white and pulled back tight. Her face was lined with wrinkles, but her eyes were sharp, clear. "You came," she said. Her voice was rough, like she hadn't used it in a while. Took long enough. I couldn't speak. I just stood there holding the journal. "You got the dreams," she said. It wasn't a question. "That means the Hollow chose you. I've been waiting here to make sure you understood." "You're dead," I said. My voice came out as a whisper. "Granny Opal's been dead for 40 years. She smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. "Dead enough. But the Hollow don't care about that. The Hollow needs someone to hold the trade. I held it for 104 years. Now it's your turn." I don't understand. You will. She stepped into the cabin. The temperature dropped. I could see my breath. There's something in these mountains. Been here since before people had names for things. It wanted out, wanted to spread. I made a deal. I'd keep it bound in this hollow, and in exchange, I'd have a long life. Good health, power to help people when they needed it. She moved closer. I backed up against the wall. But deals like that don't end when you die, she said. They pass on, blood to blood. I waited here in the spaces between until the right one came back. That's you. You've got the gift. I can see it. I don't want it, I said. Doesn't matter. You came. You read the journal. You're standing in my cabin while the fog's up. That's enough. The hollows claimed you now. She reached out and touched my forehead with one finger. Her hand was ice cold. I felt something break open inside my head. Knowledge poured in. Not in words, in understanding. I knew what was trapped here. I knew what it would do if it got out. I knew the bindings that held it, the words and stones and symbols. I knew how to maintain them, how to strengthen them, how to keep the trade, and I knew I couldn't leave. Not really. I could go back to my life, my apartment, my job, but I'd have to come back. Every month at the new moon, I'd have to come back and walk the borders and speak the words. If I didn't, the bindings would fail, and the thing in the hollow would wake up. What is it? I asked. What's trapped here? Something hungry, she said. Something that wears skin it don't own. Something that learned human voices a long time ago and never forgot. It's got lots of names. None of them matter. What matters is keeping it here. She stepped back, started to fade, not walking away, fading, like smoke. You'll learn the rest as you need to. Her voice came from everywhere and nowhere. The hollow will teach you, just like it taught me. Then she was gone. The fog began to lift. Light came back through the windows. I was alone in the cabin, holding a journal that suddenly made perfect sense. I could read all of it now. Every word, every symbol. I walked out of that cabin, hiked back to my car, and drove home. I went to work the next day, paid my bills, lived my life. But 3 weeks later, on the new moon, I felt it. A pull, a need. I got in my car and drove to the mountains, hiked in, walked the borders of the hollow, touching the stones, speaking the words. I didn't choose to do it. I just did it. Like breathing. I've been back 6 times now, 6 new moons. Each time I learn something new. I can feel the thing under the hollow. It's aware of me. It knows I'm holding the bindings. Sometimes I hear it testing them, pushing against the edges. It sounds like wind, like water, like voices in the distance. It's patient. It's been here for a very long time. It can wait. But here's what I need someone to know. I'm 32 years old. If I live as long as Granny Opal, I've got 70 more years of this. 70 more years of coming back to this hollow every month, keeping something contained that I don't fully understand. And when I die, it'll pass to someone else. Someone in my family. Someone with the gift. They'll start having the dreams. They'll feel the pull. They'll come home. I don't have kids. I never wanted them. But I've got nieces and nephews, young cousins, and someday, one of them is going to wake up from a dream about a cabin in a hollow, and they're going to smell wood smoke, and they're going to hear someone calling them home. And there's nothing I can do to stop it. The trade doesn't end. It just passes on. I'm writing this because I need someone to know what's really in those mountains. Not deer with wrong legs or voices that mimic people. Something older than those things. Something that taught those things how to be. It's contained. For now. As long as I keep doing what I'm supposed to do. As long as the next person does the same. but trades can be broken. Bindings can fail. And if they do, if someone in my family doesn't answer the call or doesn't come back or tries to run from it, God help anyone in those mountains when it gets out. I still hear Granny Opal sometimes. Late at night when I'm trying to sleep, she's teaching me, showing me things, how to strengthen the bindings, how to recognize when something's testing them, how to keep the trades strong. She says I'm doing good. She says the Hollow's pleased with me. I don't know what that means, and I'm not sure I want to. All I know is that next week is the new moon, and I'll drive back up to that Hollow, and I'll walk the borders, and I'll speak the words. Because if I don't, the thing underneath will know, and it'll start pushing harder. So that's the last one. I don't really know what to say about it. The person who sent that? They sent a follow-up this morning. Just one line. Said, I felt it testing the boundaries last night. It's getting stronger. I don't know if these stories are true. I really don't. But the people who sent them, they believe they're true. And that's what scares me.